Gonna be sweet.
All right, it is 7:06 and you are live.
Okay, today is April 1st. Hopefully it is not April Fool's Day. And this is a special meeting of the City of Oneonta Common Council. It is hereby called to order. I will call the roll, starting with Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Risberger.
Here.
Oh, I got it right this time. Councilmember Lepari-Shu.
Here.
Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Rafter.
Here.
And Councilmember Drenick.
Here.
You have to stop moving the chairs around on me. It gets confusing. Okay. We are all here. We're going to open tonight with a public hearing so that people have an opportunity to express their thoughts regarding the report that was been submitted by the Community Advisory Board, which was appointed back in the fall by myself with the council's concurrence in order to meet the governor's mandate of creating a plan for moving forward with police reform and reinvention. Carrie, why don't you just let everybody in at the same time? This way we can talk to everyone, tell them the ground rules. We don't have to repeat them over and over again, and there's no reason why each person shouldn't be able to hear what everybody else is saying.
Sure, I'm letting them in right now. You're going to have 7 people joining the meeting.
Okay. Okay, welcome to everybody. Well, do we have everybody? Okay, welcome all. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today and to express your thoughts. The document which you have seen has been developed by a board, which we've called the Community Advisory Board to the Oneonta Police Department. It was a group that was appointed by myself with the concurrence of the Common Council and authorized to move forward with doing the work, research, interviewing that is needed to create a plan for reform and reinvention of the Oneonta Police Department. The committee, the board, chose, to their credit, to bring in as many people as they could in the form of subcommittees. That allowed us to get great diversity of opinions and input in the creation of this report, which I think is a good thing. It's the way it should be. I believe that anyone who expressed an interest in being involved on the subcommittee was welcome to join in, and nobody was turned away. So this has had it's been open broadly to the community to be involved and provide their input. The subcommittee members, while not a part of the board, were not appointed and authorized to be part of the board to write the report. They served as people who could provide valuable input from members of the community in an advisory role to the members of the Community Advisory Board. And then they took all of the input and information and ideas and thoughts that they received from the subcommittee members, some of whom may be with us today, in developing their final report, or plan, which is being provided to the council tonight. So all are welcome to comment tonight. Typically in a public hearing, we keep comments to approximately 3 minutes. I'm not going to time these because this is an important subject. I'm not going to run a timer on you carefully. So I'm going to let you speak, but I ask that you do not make your presentation to be very long presentation. You are welcome to submit your thoughts as long as you want in writing, and they can become part of the permanent record. But I do ask you, typically we shoot for 3 minutes. If you go over that, I'm not going to stop you, but just, long comments should be submitted in writing. With that, I will call upon one at a time, and I will start with, looks like Diana Foster.
No, I'm good. I don't want to speak. I'm just listening in right now.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Okay. Let's go to Shannon Mchugh. Are you here to speak?
Good evening. If possible, could I reserve speaking until a little bit later?
Yes, you may.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Ronald Georgia.
I'm just listening in right now.
Okay, no problem. Denise.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I will be listening also.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm wondering what the next step is after this public hearing. Thank you.
After the public hearing, there will be, the council will discuss and vote on a resolution to adopt it. Bridgette Stitt.
Okay, I'll start us off.
Okay, Bridgette, floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. As the mayor said, my name is Bridgette Stitt, and I work here in Oneonta. I served on Subcommittee 2 of the Community Advisory Board. Shout out to Luke and Daniel. I see you both here, and I was very happy to work with you. When subcommittees were first being formed and I saw a call asking folks to reach out, I hesitated. I knew that all too often committees create an appearance of undertaking transformational change while actually stymieing it by trapping people on an endless treadmill of committees and task forces. But I joined anyway. I was pleasantly surprised in many ways. Subcommittee 2 worked hard to find common ground between vastly different people. We analyzed arrest data. We read scholarly articles, trade magazines, law reviews, and Public Policy Institute's best practice recommendations. We sent questions to OPD, the city attorney, and city HR. At times, we were met with an apparent lack of cooperation and even contempt from OPD. We ultimately created a comprehensive 20-page document of specific action steps. Personally, I felt hopeful that Oneonta was about to prove me wrong. Then I read the final report. Many of our recommendations had been cut or watered down. When we used clear, actionable, directive language, the final report recommends considering, implementing, or adopting policy. Where we clearly called on Common Council to create policy or give firm direction to OPD, the report at times shifts policy making to OPD itself. Let me highlight some of the examples that bothered me the most. In the course of our work, we discovered that OPD had provided warrior-style training to 7 officers in 2020. These trainings first came under scrutiny when one popped up on the resume of the officer who killed Philando Castile. It teaches officers that they are in the midst of a war, and research has shown that it leads to more use of force. We recommended that Oneonta ban this style of training. That has somehow morphed into recommending that OPD, quote, incorporate a focus on broader social training, which would allow OPD to continue to send its officers to militaristic trainings designed to heighten their fear and trauma, so long as they also offer an unconscious bias training. Similarly, all specificity was stripped from our drug use and mental health recommendations. Our subcommittee offered clear guidance that alternative interventions and services be non-coercive, non-carceral, and focus on long-term, non-judgmental assistance. All of that has disappeared, leaving only vague recommendations that the city explore options for new services. Organizations representing people experiencing mental illness or substance abuse have been ringing the alarm for years that well-meaning reforms have merely changed the uniforms of the people who harm them. this report risks doing exactly that. In closing, while there are many good recommendations in this report, I'm also disappointed to see that at times we squandered our opportunity for meaningful change and chose to ignore Oneonta's history of systemic racism. In the process of analyzing what arrest data OPD could provide us, we found that in 2018, Black people made up 20% of arrests, but only 5% of the city's population. When you look specifically at arrests for possession of a controlled substance, this tiny portion of the city population somehow accounted for 44% of all arrests. Every one of those arrests is a person whose life could be ruined simply because they were more likely to be arrested than a white person committing the same act. For them, this is a house fire, and this report is a squirt gun. Regardless of how you vote on this particular report, I urge you all to consider reconvening the Community Advisory Board and allowing the subcommittees to truly work together to provide recommendation we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Daniel Dreyer?
Hey, thanks for calling on me. I'm Daniel Dreyer. My family and I live here in Oneonta. I've also been participating in Subcommittee 2 that Luke Murphy has been running since November. I do really want to express appreciation for how much work Luke and everybody else on that subcommittee put in. It has been an extraordinary effort. We have all put in a huge amount of time, and I'm really proud of the work we did. I want to acknowledge I'm relatively new to this community, and I've tried to balance the importance and urgency of these issues with an awareness that I don't have that much firsthand experience here. And I've tried to overcome that and make up for that by trying to support every idea I had, every assertion I made with research and data and really clear facts. And to do that, I have stayed up many, many nights reading newspaper articles and committee meeting notes and all of the documents and statistical data OPD shared with us. We've written that all up. And I want to emphasize the result of this. As a committee, we had incredibly authentic discussions. It was not an intellectually homogeneous group. I was really impressed, that politics are so divisive. And for all of us on this committee, even when we disagreed, to be able to trust that each other wanted what was best for the community and work toward that through disagreements, I was incredibly impressed. And I'm incredibly appreciative of everyone on that committee for staying in those tough discussions. And I'm also proud of what we came up with. The recommendations that made it into the final document, I'm proud of. And I want to echo Bridgette's concerns. Everything that she just said, I agree with 100%. I share those concerns. I want to put a slightly different framing on it. I know candidly that the clock has run out. We have to send something to Albany today, tomorrow, very soon. I also think we can do more. This committee process has been incredibly constructive. It was healthy. We can pick this back up and we can keep going, and we have more content ready to go. There are good recommendations in that document, and there are more that we have ready. I have two specific requests, which are to add to this one that we're going to submit very shortly, I imagine, to add to that a concrete timeline, some kind of milestones to hold ourselves accountable for implementing those, and that we reauthorize the subcommittee process. I know we ran the clock out on important discussions that everyone wants to do right and we just couldn't get it all in there, we can pick this back up and keep working on it. And I think that's the right thing to do. I'm all done. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Steve Laudner?
There, I was able to unmute myself. Thank you. I'm Steve Lundner. I live on Maple Street in Oneonta. First, I want to thank the task force members, the OPD staff, the mayor, and all the other contributors who invested their time and effort in this collaborative police review and reform planning process. I also want to recognize that this effort was originally given an absurdly tight time frame, and that the task force also had to contend with major practical constraints in communication imposed by public health concerns, as well as a key OPD staffing change with Chief Brenner's unexpected retirement, and also late in process changes to the project's completion date. But they persevered and did a good job. In keeping with the governor's broad mandate for this effort, the submitted report being reviewed tonight lists fully 40 recommendations to the Common Council to guide OPD's future composition, training, policies, performance, and oversight while operating within its broad context. To me, these recommendations seem quite comprehensive and appropriately flexible. I find nothing to disagree with in the document. For those who know me, you know that might come as a surprise because I'm a pretty opinionated fellow. And perhaps what explains that is the comments that Bridgette first mentioned of how this does not, at this point, perhaps accurately reflect the desires of the committee. And I'm not surprised at that, because what was clear reading this document was that a large final challenge is still ahead. That is how to prioritize these recommendations and mold them into a practical plan and implementation process that can achieve intended outcomes. Recognizing this shortfall in this document, the mayor's announcement of March 29th made clear his intent to appoint a committee of the effort. However, to best serve our city and meet both the spirit and letter of Executive Order 203 that set this process in motion, I want to offer my own 2 recommendations and expectations. First, that the Common Council committee that takes over leadership of this effort maintain its broadly collaborative structure and process. Members of the task force who represent our diverse community and who have spoken to so many and learned so much in these past months are a critical resource and should be kept fully involved in this key last phase. Second, there needs to be a final public hearing on the proposed OPD reform plan that emerges, so that citizen input from this hearing, that latter hearing, can be considered for incorporation. The hearing should be held at least 3 days in advance of the Common Council's vote to ratify. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And from my perspective, all reasonable requests. I have somebody, I just have a first name, William.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you now. Please introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak. William Mchugh, 14 Parish Avenue, Oneonta, New York. A proud father-in-law of Katie Lapari Mchugh. I'm really, she's a precious gal. I want to tell you that. Thanks for offering me the time to speak. I went through the document. I just received it a couple days ago, and I spent an hour and 10 minutes on one page. I have in front of me at least 8 pages of notes where things need to be reworded, changed. I don't want to go over all of those changes right now. I'm hoping that the council will provide a time where these changes can be done. I'll just give one example. In 2000, there was a major drug bust on Fonda Avenue. It was ranked as one of the top drug busts in the history of the Southern Tier. I think 8 people went to federal prison as a result. The beginnings of that was a no-knock warrant issued by a judge. I want that no-knock warrant to stay in the document. There's some reference to it. I think there's some sort of reference to only for violent crimes. A police officer doesn't know if it's a violent crime until they fulfill that warrant. When the police came, they did a no-knock warrant issued by a judge. That's the key element right there. It's issued by a judge with the evidence to show that that no-knock warrant can happen. And inside of that house, they found assault rifles, automatic weapons, and a stash that would probably kill hundreds of people. 8 people went to federal prison. I've talked with many retired police officers that were involved in that no-knock warrant, and they said if they had not had that no-knock warrant, there would be a dead cop. And I don't want that to happen. That's just one instance is how a no-knock warrant saved, I believe, the 6th Ward. There's many references. There was one reference to pretext stops, and that's just a specific incident. In 1996, Wren versus the United States, the Supreme Court determined it was legal for police officers, law enforcement to do pretext stops. That needs to be evaluated other than just one person's view of doing research. And they need to look at what the Supreme Court said and what our district attorney is saying. Therefore, I think it's imperative that the district attorney's office evaluate the entire document and make recommendations rather than me as a common person or anyone else on the board, so to speak, who has no legal background. They admitted that in the document. It has to be evaluated by someone who was in the real deal. And I think that I would recommend that as a very first step in evaluating the document from a legal standpoint. The idea of a standing permanent citizens advisory board, I think, is something that back in the 90s, there was a public safety committee. It was made up of the chief of police, the Oneonta Fire Department chief, his council members, and as I recall, they had 1 or 2 members of the community on that board. And it was common in those days for people to come and actually voice their concerns to that public safety committee, and it worked very well as far as I knew. And there was corrections made in the service to the people through the OPD and the Oneonta Fire Department, actually. So I don't have my camera on for some reason. I couldn't get it going, but I could hold up the pages, and I have about 8 pages front and back on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of I felt were legitimate concerns that needed to be addressed before any adoption of the document. And I do appreciate you giving me the time to talk. And I value the input of citizenry. Many of the people, even my friends and neighbors, they don't know anything what's in the document. And I'm retired, and I get a chance to talk to my neighbors at a 6-foot distance. And many of the people around me are unaware of actually what was in that document. And my last point is this. No one was unsure of who was actually on the committees or subcommittees. And as far as I know, near and wide, I can't put my finger on one person who lives within a radius of mine who was on the committee or subcommittee. And that's very disturbing to me. We have some very brilliant people here in the 6th Ward. People have been here for short term and long term. I had one person call me today who's lived in the city a very, very short time and wanted to know about the document. I told him today where to get it. And he's very interested in community affairs, and hopefully he'll contribute to the well-being of the community. But I think in all due respect, the April 1st deadline is here. And sometimes I think there's a rush to do something. I've had conversation with elected officials, and what they're telling me is that the governor actually rescinded that, saying not to give extensions for this very purpose we're talking about. I couldn't understand why at least they would give us a couple more weeks to meet perhaps at the April 20th Common Council meeting and give us an extended period of time to have myself present to the council and to the people on the committee what I felt needed to be changed. And it's very unfair because I just finished them today to send these to the Common Council and to the people and say, okay, now here they are 2 hours before your meeting, 3 hours before your meeting. And it's unfair to them because they don't even have time to read my 7 pages of notes. So I think it's imperative to go back to the Albany and say, listen, we need to do this and give us a 2-week extension. And I think the New York State Assemblyman and the New York State Senator would go to bat for us, because I think from what I'm hearing, they have given extensions to other municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anybody who's did not speak that now wants to speak? Okay. Luke, as the member of the board who represented the council, anything that I see Shannon has a hand up, it looks like. Okay, Shannon, did you want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Shannon Mchugh. I am subcommittee chair for subcommittee 4. I don't have my video on because of my connection, so forgive me. I'm also the chair of the Human Rights Commission for the city of Oneonta. I just wanted to talk a little bit briefly and mirror some of what Bridgette and Daniel were speaking about with, specifics within the report. There are some really great things in this report, some things that will help us move forward in generalities. But again, as they have already mentioned, there are some specific things that committees were able to come up with that if they had had the time to work together, we could have pushed out. One of those things is the CAB committee, the Extended Community Advisory Board. Yes, all 4 subcommittees had a different idea. Those are listed in your appendix. If you look at them, they're just suggestions. You can take from each, you can take from all. Let's put, we can figure out ways to get the CAB committee together, because a continuation of this CAB committee is a really intricate piece to moving our community forward, which is absolutely what we've been trying to do. Actively pushing for everybody who's been involved. I would like to see timelines placed on what we're asking for in this report. Since it is kind of broad, I'd like to see it built upon, and kind of to mirror what Stephen was saying about maybe maintaining the structure of the current board and allowing current members who'd like to stay on to go ahead and be able to tackle this after the fact and build upon what's here already. We were under a great time restraint, unfortunately. So this is the best we could do within those time restraints. The other piece that I want to mention really quickly is the survey. There is a survey that is attached. That survey was put out by subcommittee 4, with the hopes of getting all of the responses back to the board and the main committees. It's kind of a late addition. But it's a good starting space. If you take a look at it and you read through comments and you look at the data and the feedback, it is a good starting space for our community to build upon. And I'd really like to see us take this to a bigger space. It's time to step on the gas, and I'm really hoping that we can agree on this reform with the intent that we are going to step on the gas in the future and really develop these suggestions. But thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Before I call upon Luke, was there anybody, any of the guests who I didn't call upon or who wanted to speak? Okay, Luke,
Thank you, Mayor.
or let me say Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you. I wanted to just take a moment to thank Shannon and Bridgette, Daniel, Stephen and William. I'm just making sure I've got them all lined up here so I didn't miss anybody for their time to comment and their thoughts.
What's
that? Oh, and just say what a honor it's been to work with the community on this. I was the council liaison to this process. We got to talk to many different voices. Many hours were put into developing this report for many folks with very different thoughts on the matter. Bill, to give you some peace of mind, Representative Harrington was at several of the meetings, and I believe he's in the 6th Ward. I'm not sure if he's within walking distance of your house, but he was involved in the process. And again, just to thank everyone. This was a very thoughtful document. None of these recommendations were made without plenty of research, lots of feedback, many hours of conversation with Lieutenant Witzenberg and before him, Chief Brenner. And I just wanted to say publicly, thank you to everyone that was involved for the many hours that you put into this. This is very thoughtful, and I hope hopefully a really great starting point for developing some reform.
Okay. Let me just, before we move forward, and everybody's welcome to, who joined in to speak, you're welcome to stay logged on like this as we go through the resolution and council discussion process. Won't be open for discussion by guests, but you're welcome to stay. Just to kind of sum up where we are at, first of all, I just want to thank the members of the Community Advisory Board. They did work hard and they did work with passion. And look, I think most of us believe we have a good police department. And in many ways, we have an excellent police department. But that doesn't mean that it is not in need of reform and reinvention. You know, we live in a changing world, changing expectations. Our community is changing, and standing still is not the right thing for any of us to be doing at this time. I'm proud of the way that we conducted this process. You know, we were a little different than many of the other communities that we've seen. And there have been many communities where the police chief chaired the board. There have been communities where the mayor was on the board. We didn't do that. We took it seriously that this was going to be a community-driven community advisory board. I was not a member of the board. The police chief was not a member of the board. We let the board take this where they felt it should go. We let them define the process. They chose to break us up into subcommittees. That was their choice. Each of the board members or some of the board members took it upon themselves to recruit people to be on this subcommittee. I don't think anybody turned away anybody who expressed an interest. And chaired these subcommittees and did an awful lot of work, meeting sometimes 2 and 3 times a week to develop their recommendations. along with that comes challenges. We had a lot of different people involved, people from different backgrounds, and that's the way it should be, who came up with a lot of really diverse recommendations. As we got close to the end of the process, it became apparent that some of the recommendations were quite detailed, and to the credit of the board, they did a lot of research and prepared things that were very detailed in terms procedurally. Problem was that unfortunately not enough was done in researching, or even were they able to research the state laws, regulations, union contracts, civil service regulations that make things possible. So a lot of that now needs to be done. In addition, I think somebody mentioned, I think it was Bill Mchugh who had mentioned, involvement of some of the stakeholders that needed to be involved in some of the more detailed legal processes were not. And that includes the district attorney, the city prosecutor, and others who are in our local justice system. So, and they need to be brought in before we can define specific detailed procedural ways of going forward. So that is why in the end, it was the board, the leadership of the board put together a report and got the approval of the entire board to put some of the detailed recommendations in the appendix and have all of the others in recommendation form, and to allow the process to continue under the guidance of the council, who has the ultimate authority to decide what they approve as the final changes that are to be made in the police force. I would encourage the council as they go forward to do what some of the people here have suggested, and I'm sure that they will. And that is to not only bring in some of the experts as stakeholders, such as the DA and the city prosecutor, but also to continue to talk with the people, continue to talk with the people who are on the community advisory board. So even though their official work is done, I would encourage the council to continue as they go forward to speak with them and hear them out on their recommendations before they decide on a final plan of implementation to approve. Some people mentioned a timeline. I think we have included that in the resolution requiring a timeline, that the final implementation plan include a timeline for implementation. Now, not every recommendation that makes it will have the same date for implementation. Some are complicated, some can be done in a day. But I've asked everyone to have a timeline. And I've also set a target date to get this done of May 18th, which is the day of the council meeting. I know that that's about 6 weeks away. That is that's an aggressive target, but we're already on borrowed time. So I think that we need to work hard to get to that point. So yes, there's challenges, and yes, not everybody walks away from this feeling that everything that they wanted to see in this report made it through to the final report when the board put it together. But everything was meaningful. There is real reform in this report. If you read through it carefully, there is a lot of reform to be seen in this report. I think that it's something we can all be proud of. You know, I'm proud of the way we did it. I'm thankful of all the members of the board for the work that they did. And I'm confident in the council's ability to bring this to a final implementation plan, one that both is feasible, meets all the legal requirements, all the requirements of our negotiated contracts, and one that takes into input from some of the stakeholders who may not have been involved in the process so far, and one that respects, as it says in the report, respects the intent of the Community Advisory Board in the reforms that they have spoken about. So with that, The next place for us to go is we're going to be asking the council to adopt this plan. That doesn't, all what they are doing is they're adopting exactly what it says in the plan, is that they are adopting the recommendations that are being provided by the Community Advisory Board, with the understanding that by adopting it, they agree to create an actual implementation plan of implementing the spirit of those recommendations to the extent that they are able to, both by laws, regulations, negotiated contracts, and taking into account the additional input that they get from additional stakeholders. And I also agree, I think, I'm not sure who has said it, but somebody said that they would like to see another opportunity for the public to weigh in, a public hearing before the council approves their implementation plan. I think that's certainly appropriate, and we'll see that that gets done. And to the members of the subcommittees, we did not officially appoint you to be part of the board. You volunteered to do so. I want to thank you all for doing that. I know many of you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. So it is much appreciated. And, you know, I do understand your frustrations that maybe you feel that some of the specific recommendations you put in there did not make it to the final cut when the board came together to approve a final cut. But we're not there yet, and your work will make a difference, I have no doubt. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the resolution that we have for adopting it. And then once I read the resolution, we open it up for discussion by the council members. That will be council members only in that discussion. And then hopefully we will get to a vote. Okay. Okay, the resolution reads, whereas the city of Oneonta has performed a comprehensive review of current police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices. And whereas the city of Oneonta has developed a plan to improve such deployment strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, known as the plan. And whereas the city of Oneonta has consulted with stakeholders, including the leadership of the Oneonta Police Department regarding the plan. And whereas the city of Oneonta has offered the plan in draft form for public comment to all citizens in the locality prior to the adoption of the plan by the local legislative body. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Common Council of the city of Oneonta adopts the plan and commits to the development and ratification of a detailed implementation timeline and plan no later than May 18th, 2021, to be based upon the recommendations outlined in the plan to the extent allowable by existing resources, laws, regulations, and contractual agreements. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councilmember Murphy, second, Councilmember Drenick. Okay, discussion, and just please raise your hand and I'll call upon you to talk. Councilmember Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to offer a suggestion that in the paragraph of be it resolved, after the plan, that we would follow with what was articulated in the last whereas, where the plan is referred to as in draft. So I would suggest that we put it down as the Common Council of the City of Oneonta adopts the plan in draft form and commits to the development and ratification of a detailed implementation timeline and plan. It would just give a little bit.
So if I understand you correctly, you're just adding the words in draft form after the word plan in the final paragraph. Is that correct?
That's correct, Harry.
Okay. Um, I take that as a friendly amendment.
Yes.
David, weigh in on what we need to do to make that change.
You can do it by acclamation. There's no, this isn't a local law or anything. So as long as there's consensus to amend it, it can be amended.
Does anybody object to that amendment? Raise your hand if you do.
I don't object. I have a question. Which plan in that paragraph are we putting in draft form after? The first one, the second one, or the third one? Or is it the first and third one?
It'd be the first one, David, after be it resolved, comma, that the common council of the city of Oneonta adopts the plan in draft form.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought Gary had said the third one, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay. So if I see no objections, then we will make that amendment as stated.
May I just ask?
I will, yeah, go ahead.
For clarification,
Please, sir.
to Len, I'm so sorry, Len. I'm trying to follow along here, and I've got a couple of these windows open for it. Would you mind pointing out just one more time? And again, I apologize. I'm trying to keep up.
No, it's fine, Luke.
What I'll do, Luke, is let me just read through with the amendment so to make sure everybody's on the same page with it. Okay.
Sure.
I'm going to reread that last paragraph. Be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Oneonta adopts the plan in draft form and commits to the development and ratification of a detailed implementation timeline and plan no later than May 18, 2021, to be based upon the recommendations outlined in the plan to the extent allowable by existing resources, laws, regulations, and contractual agreements.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. I guess, Len, I would ask your thoughts as to including the draft part in there.
Luke, I was just looking for the consistency because it's listed as that in the fourth whereas.
Yes.
Where it says, whereas the city of Oneonta has offered the plan in draft form for public comment. And so that would take it right back down into the be it resolved, where we're charged as legislators, that that reference is there. That's our charge in be it resolved.
Thank you for the clarification. I was just, there's a lot of the plans in there, so just making sure I was on the right page.
Agreed.
Okay. Councilmember Davies.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to raise a question about the timeline in terms of the May 18th date. I agree. We need to work on this and we need to get it done quickly. One of the things I heard from several of the committee members is they felt very pressed for time and what was in a very important process. And I'm just a little cautious about kind of making the same mistake, pressing ourselves for time and not doing this right. And so I would suggest that even 2 weeks, 3 weeks into June might extend a little bit longer time, giving the council and hopefully other members from the original committee time to really to do this right and to put together a plan that is going to be a really strong plan moving into the future. I have no problem with the date in terms of trying to get there quickly. I just want to make sure we get there correctly and right. So that's why I'd only suggest that we consider a couple weeks later in June.
That's up to the council, however you feel about it. I'm seeing head shaking. Does anybody object to it? Okay. What is the date you think, Mark?
I don't have the date at the top of my head, but I would say whatever our first council meeting in June, and I believe that would leave us 2 to 3 weeks. June 1st. Well, not much more time, but at least it's a little bit more time.
Okay. So if there are no objections to changing that date to June 1st, I have no objections from that. Okay. Fair enough. Now, in order to implement this, I have asked that Len Carson, Mark Drenick, Luke Murphy, and Dave Risberger take the lead. But that doesn't exclude anybody. So, of course, to the extent other council members want to be involved in leading this, of course, you're welcome to. But I asked those four, and they all agreed to provide leadership in moving this forward, so that we can keep it on a tight pace. But nobody's excluded. Further discussion, Councilmember Harrington.
I guess I'm just confused. How are they going to? I mean, is it like a committee that they're going to meet? Because if more of us show up, then we're into meetings law, I believe. So we're going to have them where it's actually put out there that we're meeting on this date. And if we're going to do that, then we might as well just have the whole council. For transparency, everybody should see us working on this as a whole because it is so important, and have representation from all 8 wards, not just, 4 council members working on it.
I see no reason why it shouldn't be transparent and why it shouldn't be open. The meeting shouldn't be open to the public. And there's nothing that prevents the entire council from attending every meeting. I just said that nobody is excluded. The thought is that not everybody wants to put all of that time in or feels a commitment to put all that time in. But everybody is, so that's why I asked for a leadership group, but everybody's welcome to. But certainly if everybody shows up to every meeting, that's good. That's something good. Councilmember Davies.
Yeah, just one last thing with the leadership group. I'd like to recommend, we heard from a lot of folks here today that they felt as though the work that was begun by the board, that they wanted to see it through. I would just recommend that the leadership group consider bringing board members, board committee members, and subcommittee members into the process, so that a lot of the good thinking that was started there and the research that was begun there, that they can hear from them what that research was, what the thinking was, and utilize some of the thinking and expertise of the people that were present, as well as also introduce other folks onto the group to be able to make recommendations. Mayor, you mentioned legal representation, having some recommendations there.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, if there's none, John?
Just
Councilman Rafter?
logistically, we would need to announce public meetings regarding this if we have 5 council members involved. Is that correct? So just scheduling a meeting 2 days in advance would not be possible without notice.
Actually,
is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay,
you would have to do it in advance, and if it's a regularly scheduled meeting, it has to be 72 hours in advance. But you can call meetings for any purpose that is either unplanned, as long as you notify all the media and post it on the website.
In what how much advance notice do we need?
There's no particular time. There's no particular time. Usually, if it's a regularly scheduled meeting, or it's something that's planned ahead, then 72 hours, 3 days.
Okay.
Before I call the vote, Acting Chief Witzenberg, anything that you want to add?
No, not really. I think that everybody's put in an enormous amount of effort into this. And coming into this late in the game, I would also like to reiterate my thanks for the community involvement. I know that it's been a difficult and challenging time for everybody. And thank you for your patience with me being the newcomer to the process.
Okay. All right, if there's no more discussion, I'm going to call the vote. I'm sorry. Len Carson.
Thank you, Gary. Did we want to appoint the chairman at this point, or did you want to do that after we pass the bill or pass the motion?
My feeling is let the group appoint the chairman on their own.
Okay. All right.
Or if you don't, it's up to you whether you need a chairman. I mean, I think the group can be self-governing and decide how you want to move forward.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to call the vote, starting with Councilmember Murphy.
Aye.
Councilmember Davies.
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger.
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu.
Aye.
Councilmember Carson.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Aye.
Councilmember Rafter.
Yes.
Councilmember Drenick.
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. I think this is a significant step forward. There's still a lot of work to do. And, any plan, even when it's created, is going to be a living document because we live in a changing world. We don't expect, anything to be carved in stone forever. So we just continue to move forward, change with the world, continuously improve. That's what it's all about. Again, I'm proud of the way we've done this. I'm proud of the people who've worked on it. I want to thank the Oneonta Police Department for their collaboration with it. And I have no doubt that once this is finalized, that they will effectively embrace the reform and the changes in moving forward. Okay, with that, I don't believe there's anything else on the agenda to discuss. So I thank everybody for speaking and joining us tonight, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.